Hi, welcome to Rowing on the Square, and I'm Adrian, your host, and I'm here to talk about lowering your 2K with things that you can do this summer. So, how should we attack the 2K? And I know the dreaded 2K, everybody can get really out of sorts when you're chasing that number. That number is so important. It's important in a lot of different ways. It proves that you're putting in the effort. The number is the meaning of what you've been doing in your rowing. And I know that a lot of people can get really in their heads about it. And there's a lot of different things you could be doing over the summer in order to help your 2K. The first thing is if you aren't doing your endurance work, if you aren't eating meters for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you may need to start considering a healthy helping of meters per day. And do these meters need to be on the rowing machine? I wouldn't say all of the meters need to be on the rowing machine. I would say at least 1 to 2 days worth of the workouts should be on the rowing machine just to keep your body fresh and aware of how that feels and how that input goes into your body. But what's great about the summer, if you're not doing summer rowing, is that there are so many wonderful ways to build endurance. Some of them are really fun you can do with other people. Some of them are, you do as shadow work in your basement, whether it be a stationary bike, which is great. The bike erg is an amazing tool to use, especially because you can match up those per thousand slash per 500s with each other so that you know that you're getting the equivalent workout that you would get on the rowing machine versus the bike. Getting out and running, if you can tolerate it, is a great endurance use of your time. Getting good at running, the expenditure as far as if you're running at a pace equal to that of the energy exertion of the rowing machine, it can be matched up pretty easily. So that's a good option. If you want to get off your bottom and out running, then go ahead and do that for some endurance. You could do swimming. Also, a great idea getting into the pool, getting unweighted. It's great for range of motion and helping just take some of that wear and tear off of your joints. Other great options out there are walking hills. Walking up and down hills can strengthen the calf muscles. It can get the heart rate up without necessarily needing to do all the bouncing and moving around that you do when you're out running. So there's a lot of really great ideas. You could play racquetball, you could play tennis, you could pickleball with your friends. You could do rock climbing, you could do really any sport. That's what's great about summertime is just you should expand your movement and try to work in different planes of movement than you do for rowing. Take that time to take that break if you are not doing summer rowing. What else could you do besides the endurance training? You could do some strength training, and a good 4 week cycle of strength training could do you wonders. You take your 4 weeks, each week you would do your base exercises. And I always think for rowing, our baseline kind of benchmark exercises are the deadlift, the squat, and the bench pull. You could add other things like a lat pull down or a bicep curl or an Arnold press or a military press or an upright row. You could really be very dynamic with it. You want to think about each muscle group when you're strengthening. You want to try to get at least 10 sets on the low end. You can get up, some people like to see 15 to 20 sets during the week of that particular load on that particular muscle. You don't need to do the exact same exercise. You might, for say, we were talking about the biceps. So you might do a bicep curl, like a straight up bicep curl. You might do like a preacher's curl and you might do like an Arnold press. So then you've got your 3 exercises. You do 4 sets of those exercises 3 days a week, and you covered your 10 to 12 sets of that exercise. So you don't necessarily need to do the same exercise every single time, but you could. It's really about putting that effort into that muscle over time. And I think like a month plan of really just picking those exercises and making sure that you do them is just really a great way to build your strength. Now, we're talking about building our strength and something that you could do just to kind of track it to see if it's helped. So you could do like a 10-second test, a peak power test on the erg machine, just to get a number. That gives you a number of like the amount of watts that you can create over those 10, not over the 10 seconds, but within those 10 seconds, we want to see what is the strongest stroke that you can pull within the 10 seconds, not the average. If you're doing a 1 minute test, it's the average, not the peak of the power. So for that 10-second peak power test, if you do it on the erg, you have to set it for 20 seconds. I always tell people 5 seconds to get into it. And then you have by stroke 3, 4, 5, you want to try to produce the strongest stroke. Then you'll have that number. You can hold on to that number and you can do a week of exercise, just pure strength. See how you feel. That next Monday rolls around, peak power it up again. See if you can pull any harder. Another week goes by. See if you can pull a little harder on the next week and see what you have after 4 weeks. So once you've built your strength up, if you're tolerating your repetitions, you're getting through your sets by repetition 8, 9, 10, you want to be feeling like you're working, that the muscles are activating, and that if you had to do more than that, you couldn't. So you want to be making sure that you're at the point where you're feeling that fatigue in the muscle. The next week, you can add more weight or you could add more reps, one or the other. You can change one of the variables to put in a stimulus of intensity. You do that for 4 weeks, say you work up to deadlifting your body weight or something. So you've improved your strength a little bit, you're lifting at your body weight, whatever you finish at. So after that first month of summer, whatever you finish at those weights, those become your base weights. Okay. So you're going to hold on to that. You're going to do those 2 times a week. And then now you're going to start working on your endurance. You're just going to start eating meters for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You can erg 3 times a day, but I would do 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes. Start to get your body acclimated to putting in those meters. And then if you're not summer rowing, go ahead and put the variety in. It's meters of biking, it's meters of running, it's meters of erging. And you're going to try to increase the amount. I always say a healthy increase is between 10 to 20%. Research shows the closer you get to 30%, the closer the likelihood of injury increases. So if you're keeping track of your meters, it's really great because then you can use that as a parameter. So say over the week you've completed 60K worth of meters. You're going to do 10% more. 10% more of that is another 6,000 meters. That means the following week, instead of 10,000 meters, you can do 11,000 meters per workout if you were doing them 6 times a day or 6 times during the week. So the other thing is when you're doing your strength training, you can also use the poundage that you're doing to then figure out how much can I increase my weight. If we're talking about the 10 to 20% rule, if you're lifting a 10-pound weight 1 week and you lift it and you could do a total poundage over your day. So say the workout that you did was 1,000 pounds worth of movement. So you multiply out the repetitions and how much weight you had. And it doesn't matter what the exercises are. You are just saying what the total amount of poundage your body took on during that workout. You could record those over time over that week. And then at the end of the week, you can figure out what's 10% more of that amount of pounds over a week. And then you can divide those pounds up over the next week and you can increase by there. So kind of taking the guesswork out of it. If you feel like that first base week got you moving, got you feeling your muscles, not to the point of injury, but to the point of, yeah, my muscles were sore the next day. I did need the next day off. Then you're pretty close to what you should be doing. And then you can use that poundage parameter, multiply it by 10%, and you can increase it each week. So I hope that's some good ideas as far as working on, base work for your 2K. So I would start with maybe a strengthening block for June, a endurance block for July, and then the time that you have left in August, if you're competing and you need to get ready for your 6K, I would start working on some of those 6K like pieces and start same idea, 10% more. So maybe you're doing a 12-minute piece that's close to your zone 4 or zone 5 using heart rate as kind of like your parameter. Doing some of these longer intense pieces at 24, 26, working on building up to your 6K tolerance, doing 4K by 5 with rest in between. You can do some of those different workouts when you get to August. You don't necessarily need to go ahead and be doing them during the summer, at the beginning of the summer. If you're one of those people who's a junior and you're heading into your senior year, you're trying to get that 2K number that you really want to get, you might have to ditch doing 6K work in August and do some 2K work and try to work on your 2K number. Doing some 2K predictors. If you're interested in a list of 2K predictor workouts, hit me up, shoot me an email. I will send you that. The 2K predictors are really great for kind of, because it gets you out of the headspace of like, oh gosh, I just got to sit down and figure out what my 2K is. But it also can get you to the point where you can gauge what you can do. Remember, the 2K is a lot of mental work. Sometimes you just have to work on what is it going to feel like? How am I going to put the 2K together? When you do a 2K on your own, I highly recommend, or if you're doing a 2K with a group, I highly recommend using either erg data or using something like Row Hero. Both really great apps. You can actually connect your Row Hero app to your erg data just in case you don't want to lose any of the data that you're doing. You want it to count for something. And then also, if you're a crew lab person, you can connect Row Hero to erg data and erg data to Crew Lab, and then all your information gets saved. What I love about Row Hero is the force curve. Force curve gives you some information about how efficient are you. Is your curve nice and smooth? Are there any bumps or lumps? Is there power leaking? Those bumps and lumps in your force curve are power leakage points. If you can correct those power leakage points for your 2K, that might be just enough to get you that number that you need. The other thing is, when you do that sample 2K, push that file to Excel. Take a look at it and look at it stroke by stroke. What I like to do with my clients is I highlight every off stroke. So if we chose a number, so if your number was 155, if it's not 155 on that sheet, I highlight it. I go through and I print it out because I'm old school. Sorry. Sorry, trees. So we print it out and we look at those 3 or 4 pieces of paper, and you can visually see what your test is like. You can then, with this information, you have the power to make that correction. Sometimes it's not the third 500. I've had people who are like, oh, it's the third 500. And that's where I fall apart. And we do a sample 2K and it's not the third 500. Something starts happening in the second 500. They start doubting themselves. They start out too fast or they start out too slow. We take a look at those first couple strokes. Did you get on goal, or did you spend 20 strokes under goal? Those 20 strokes are going to burn you on paper number 3, 4, because you're burning your energy. You're supposed to get right to your number, and it should look like the printout had the same number, same, all the way to the end. And that's always what I work on with athletes is, can you control the test? Can you put together a controlled 2K that starts from the beginning and goes to the end? Once you can control the test, we can start getting fancy. We can start doing things. We can add things. We can put in power tens. We can have a really great sprint. We could do some negative splitting. But if you can't do a sample test where you sustain from start to finish, I said I was going to do this number and I did this number to the end, then we need to back up and figure out that maybe that's not your number. And maybe we need to start somewhere else. I can't take you to where you want to go if you can't manipulate the machine to do what you need it to do. And that comes with knowledge. That comes with understanding that when you go off goal, some people go off goal five beats, 5 seconds off of what they're supposed to be doing. Some people throw the towel in and they'll go off goal for 20-second splits above. They'll take 2 or 3 strokes where they're just basically not pulling. And so what we need to do is we need to then back those off strokes off and be able to be like, okay, well, you can't go to 220 and expect to be able to make up the time to get back to that 155. You just can't do that. So if we're having off strokes, that we get off strokes that are closer to goal than they were before. And the only way that you'll know this is if you have this information. Um, if you had a 2K and you know what machine you used at the and date that you did it, you can then go back in and get the memory out of that machine. So it all is not lost if you're like, "Oh, there was a 2K way back when." If you knew what machine you're on, theoretically you can go back into the memory and you can retrieve it and then you can push it to Excel. So if you need help doing that, please reach out to me. Like I said, you need to know what machine you were on. You need to know what day you did it on. And then Row Hero or Erg Data will be able to pull off the machine, but you have to go into when you pull up the screen, you have to go into the memory and grab it that way. Then you have that data, and then you won't have to do a practice test. You'll already know what you were doing. So I wish everyone the best as you trying to approach your 2Ks. For the masters out there, for that 1K, being able to control that 1K, it's a different beast because it's slow. It's a faster pace and there's less time for correction. I think 2K versus 1K, 2K there's a lot of space to kind of be like, okay, well, I was off this stroke on the third 500. It's not going to kill me. I've got time to make that up. When you're working on that 1K, it's such a quick turnaround, one or two off strokes, and the time, there just isn't the time to make those corrections. Same idea with the 1K, doing 1K predictors. Is because it's a shorter experience, you can do more 1Ks and kind of feel comfortable doing that and testing it out. But the same idea, you want to be able to know what you're doing. And it becomes even more key to do first five strokes and on goal on the 1K because there's just isn't the time to take 20 strokes under goal and then go above goals too much and then to be able to correct and come back, like it's 4 to 5 minutes worth of or sometimes, just 3 plus minutes worth of time between. It's a big range of what people can do between the 3 minutes and the 5 minutes on a 1K, but there's just not a lot of time. There's a lot of urgency with, the 1K and, changing your 1K time potentially could be about turnover more than anything else. Sometimes, especially for masters rowers, getting the right amount of turnover to occur during that short test, plus the right drag factor. The drag factor on a 2K versus a 1K, you can handle a little bit more drag on a 1K than you can on a 2K. So you have to play around with that too. How much resistance can I put on myself and still have my drive turnover efficiently? Can I get up to 32, 34 and just crank it out all the way through that? It's not that many strokes for that 1K. It's boom and done. So you want to make sure that you're kind of putting it all together. You've got 34 strokes the first minute, 34 strokes the second minute, 34 strokes the third minute, and 30. It's just such a small amount of strokes that there's not a lot of room for error. So, but again, I say for both the 1K and the 2K that being able to create a consistent test first, then you go for fanciness. Then you can try doing elaborate sprints or negative splitting. But if you can't create a consistent test from start to finish, then you need to back off on that number that you're doing and learn how to control. And then from there, that's the springboard to advancing the test. I hope this was helpful. If you need more information, feel free to reach out, shoot me an email, and I'd love to chat with you about your 2K goals and your 1K goals. Take care, everyone.